Well, I live out here, born and raised out here. My family came out here, first generation from South America, from Ecuador, um, and so this is home, and just out here, man, I'm just continuing to work, build my business, do motivational speaking, as well as film. I'm a screenplay writer, and I've written a few films, and so now I want to transition into like writing and directing. So working on that. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, let's start there then, because
Okay.
I'm kind of a film buff myself, trying to get into that space in directing, and I have a few
Yeah.
screenwriting, just scripts that I've had for like the last 4 years, just waiting for like because obviously with finances and getting a team together and
Yeah.
making it, what you want it to be. How did you, has that always been a passion for you? Because I know sports were a big thing, like wanting to be a baseball player growing up and everything.
Yeah.
That's something that kind of developed over time later on in life.
Yeah, definitely. Like I never thought when I was younger I wanted to be a writer. But like I love sports, baseball specifically was my thing. And after I went to prison, I couldn't play sports no more, and none of that. So the one thing that that helped me was writing. So started writing music, started writing poetry, and then started writing plays, and then transitioned over to screenplays. And that basically just taught myself and, continued to do that, and then connected with people while I was in there. So as soon as I got out, I was, commissioned to write two screenplays, which I did. Yeah.
That's all.
So,
What were they about? Is there like specific genres that you kind of have more passion for, or is it kind of just all over the
mhm.
place wherever your brain takes you?
Yeah, I typically like to write about, inspirational stories. So, but the ones I was commissioned for was by this organization in New York that they wanted me to write two screenplays. One about, well, really, they're both about the struggles of life after prison. So, the first one was about a relationship, a guy who gets married to a woman. They meet him while he's in prison, so they've never been out into the free world together. So he comes home and he sees that it's like a whole different, relationship. They both see it and they start to struggle and they're going through it. And, he's just getting out. She doesn't know how to deal with it. So a real life thing that really occurs for people when they get into relationships inside and come out. So that one kind of shows the transition of them going through their struggle. And then at the end, the resolution of them, not staying together. So, and then the second one was about a guy who did, almost 30 years and he got out and didn't know anything about technology, didn't know how to set up an email, didn't know how to do anything, not even work stuff around the house. So we show his struggle and frustration and how, his nephew ends up being like his mentor and teaching him stuff. So it's kind of like the roles reverse. He's the older guy, but it shows like you have to be willing to accept help from others, So that's the message behind it, And so these were being shown in the prisons in New York, like all the prisons in New York, they show them on their institutional channel. Uh,
That's insane,
uh,
man. And like you
yeah.
gotta have to not only just take away from your experiences that you have and
Mhm.
your own experience, your own life in being in there, but at the same time you got to remember little things as they're happening and
Yeah.
implement those in some of the scenes, right? Because again, you're 20 combined years. What was it? 17 consecutive years.
Yeah.
Um, you have to remember like little things like that to where it's like, okay, nobody really else has this experience. You can't tell a writer to put that in because they're gonna be like, what does that even mean? Only people that have actually gone through it know exactly, what those little things are.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things, like even like my mentor, Alejandro Montevedes, he's a director. He's done many films like Bella and Little Boy, and he got two other films coming out. He's really big out here, and he became my mentor. I met him, and he told me too. He was like what you have, like 10 years of film school can't give to somebody.
Yeah.
It's your experiences and what you've been through. So write on that. Always tap into that when you're writing, and so that's what I do. And really in everything in life, I take things from my life that I've learned and I implement them, whether it's in my coaching and mentoring, my speaking, my films, everything I do, I try to inspire and educate and create transformation in others. So yeah, I always do that, always tap into that.
At what point did you tap into like even like because I've heard Peter say it multiple times too, where like you knew how to operate, whether it be social media, making reels, making
Yeah.
posts while you were still behind bars. Like, how did you get into that? How did you know, like, okay, this is where the trend's going. By the time I get out, like, I'm gonna be hitting the ground running almost.
Yeah. Reading, like just literally, like even now when I talk to guys in prison, still one thing I tell them is to continue reading, and I send them magazines and books, because you can't, have access to internet. And so it's something about, reading, right? It's like when you're in a situation where you can't have access to internet and the phone and all these other things, and you could just focus and just read and then take notes and write, and you have those conversations with yourself. And so you internalize all that. So I started reading about technology and studying it and reading all these books, and learning so much and taking notes. And so when I got out, now it's just about going back into my brain and saying, okay, I learned about this. Now let me go ahead and, start looking into it now that I have internet access, and just self-teaching. That's what it's all about. It's just, every day, taking time out to learn more and more.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be aware at all times too, or else you're just wasting your time. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, for
did you
sure.
take like all those moments, and I'm gonna butcher this, but like those times because you were getting into trouble while you were in prison,
Yeah.
and they obviously put you in solidarity and
Yeah.
I feel like in those moments when you're alone with your thoughts and it's you versus you, that's when you're really digging down deep and like organizing what's going to happen in the future.
Definitely. Like that's where my transformation happened, me being alone in solitary in my thoughts. At first it started off overwhelming. It was just because all the guilt, all the people I hurt, everybody that I impacted started to hit me at once. Because it's like when you're in silence and it's just you and you just reflect on your life and you've done so much bad stuff. It's like now it's like either you're going to give up and you're going to take your life, or you're going to get on drugs or you're going to work on yourself. And for me, it started off, like me started off with drugs. And then it went to me wanting to take my life. And then it took a man to come into my life. It was a pastor came into my life, and, and I wasn't overly religious or anything. It's just a person that came into my life, gave me his time, act like he cared, like when nobody else did. That changed me, and he challenged me to keep going, and I did. And through the process of that, I was able to change. And it wasn't easy. It took many years, and I'm still a work in progress. But yeah, I think that if you really want to change and have some transformation, you have to have that moment of like in solitary, whatever, even at home, just separating yourself from the world, creating that buffer zone between you and everybody else, and taking that time on to reflect on things and figure out where you want to go.
What do you think? Well, not what do you think? What were those not triggers, but those things that you kind of had to either let go or those uh, anger moments that kind of got in the way of how
Yeah.
you think now almost.
Yeah. Well, anger is definitely a huge one. And one of the things I had to do and I was just writing about it, was, transmute these feelings into something positive. So taking that anger and putting it into something that can help others. And that's not easy, but once you recognize it and you start identifying the anger, you see it coming, it's there. You take that, like, well, that's what I do. I take that and I channel it through, my writing. So I just start writing, I start brainstorming, or I even work out. Like I just like you become accustomed, like who you are and what you need to do when those moments come of frustration, anger, doubt. It's just all about working on yourself. That's why people say like you have to invest in yourself. You're your biggest asset. Like we put all this money into our houses and cars and make sure that's fine. But how much time and money are you putting into yourself? And I had to learn to always, make sure I put the most of my energy and time into myself, because that's the foundation of everything else.
I think that's such an important note too, to
Yeah.
like take anger and use it. Know you can control it and
Hmm.
use it for something good, as opposed to just being like let it go, or like. And obviously there are times where you should let it go, but then there's
Yeah.
times where it's like if you know how to properly channel that anger, it's good to put it in other places.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And that's the way to do it. And that's like it's like managing, that anger bag, as we used to say in our group, is like, you don't let it build up, because when you build up, that's when you snap you blow up. So every day anger is natural. We all go through it, but it's just knowing how to control it and channel it and release out of the bag before it blows up into something big. So,
Did that ever happen? Whether it be during your sentence or obviously even beforehand, where you look back and be like, I shouldn't have blown up there.
yeah, I mean that my whole life was just being a reactionist and being impulsive, and that's because that came with the lifestyle. Like in prison, you can't just shine things off. You can't walk away. You can't, if somebody disrespects you, you can't just be like, whatever, I forgive you. No, because any sense of weakness, it's like now you become prey, right? Like the predators on the prey. And it's just the nature of the world that prison is. And so for me, I was always taught to just react. So when you get angry, you react with violence. But so when I changed my life, it wasn't easy because now I have to react differently. And I was tested through that multiple times and I had to, go through my, like I've been stabbed and everything because I had to, really stick strong to my change. And I could have came back out and attacked or stabbed somebody in response to that. But once I said I was going to take control of my life and not let anybody else dictate, what I do, I was okay with that, and for me, that's the hardest thing to do. And that's what really strength is, not reacting, when that's what everybody else is doing. It's being different, being your own man. That's hard to do.
Oh yeah, that's something you got to
Yeah.
relearn every single day, and I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Because you're always
Yeah.
being battle tested in that sense of like, okay, like I did good today. I didn't let it get to me. Where like something else is gonna come along, you're gonna be like, oh God, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it's simple things like sitting in traffic or bigger things that you've gone through. Like every single day, there's always something to be angry about, and you just gotta figure out how to
Yeah.
channel that for good.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly, man.
How
So,
did you how did you fare? Because I know you being a part of a team and you kind of utilized that aspect
mm,
when you got out surrounding yourself with the right people that kind of were like-minded in a sense, like Peter Meyerhoff, someone that
mhm,
not exactly the same story, but very similar, like he can relate
yeah.
to a lot of things that you went through. Um, Growing up as a baseball player, you wanted to be a pro baseball player. That was your first dream, right? Do you
Yeah.
think having that team aspect was always a part of your life, and you think that's where it started?
Yeah. Like I always talk about the power of community and how it plays such a huge role on who we become as men and men and women, but I could speak for myself as a growing up, in sports. That's where I first learned about, team, the importance of being a team player, right? And then the importance of having like a brotherhood of people that you can trust on and connecting with those people. And then leadership, like that's where I first like kind of discovered that, like I had a somewhat of like a leadership role in sports too. And then even as I grew, I became like Peter, a shot caller in prison. And it was almost like an innate thing that was within me. And I look back when I was playing baseball, the same thing. Like I was that guy who would get everybody together and just let's pump everybody up to go out there and do this. And just naturally. And so I did learn a lot about that in sports. And then I also so once I went into the streets because I ran away from home at an early age, dealing with all the stuff going on at home. Um, I ran into the street and I became a gang member. And it's the same thing. It's that team, it's that group, it's that brotherhood that I was seeking out as a young man. I needed that. And it started because that's what I was brought into with sports. And so now I'm looking for it in a negative place, and that became in a gang. And then when I went to prison, it continued on that. And then now today, it's the same thing. Like my community, like Peter and the rest of the people that like we're a community. And it's still just as powerful today as it was back then when I was a kid. It's just now we're doing it, we're doing it the right way. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's definitely ties in. And that's one of the things I teach young people now when I mentor is become a part of a strong and positive community. That's like, it's so important. It's critical, I think, when it comes to like the youth
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, at what point did you realize, or did you always realize, whether it be, getting into it at what, 13, 14 years old, being a part of a gang, even in prison, doing just the wrong thing? Was it a
Yeah.
learning curve to kind of trick your mind into doing the right thing, or did you always knew that you were doing the wrong thing, but it just didn't matter at that point?
I got to a point like, where it just, my mindset became so warped that I felt like I was justifying all the wrong that I was doing.
Yeah.
I was doing it, I was selling drugs and I was harming people so that I could have money and survive and help other people out. I kept justifying, that was the way I justified it, and, becoming a gamer, doing all these things was like, I wasn't no longer thinking about, living positive. I was fully committed to that lifestyle. I mean, I would have died for it. So I was all in. And that's how warped my mindset was. So once I changed my life, I had to peel away those layers that had accumulated, that put me in that position to be this negative person. And that was just consistently working on myself and wanting to change. That was the main thing, is the want. Like once I wanted to, it was like now I just had to work on it daily and stay disciplined in that. And so, yeah, I mean, I knew right from wrong when I was a kid. I was raised, both my parents in a good home and all that, and just everything shifted and everything my whole life changed. And then now I came back to the person that I was meant to be today. I rediscovered that person, so to speak. And so, yeah, I really was, when I was in there though, like when I was deep in that life, like that criminal life, like I really lost touch with what right was. I was just fully just committed to that negative lifestyle.
I mean, when you're kind of around it, or bad things are happening to you, especially at a young age, like your
Yeah.
brain just hasn't developed to the point where it's like you can't really take negative moments and be like, ah, F it, Like it's
Mhm.
more so like, oh, like what am I gonna do to really take comfort in this? And it's almost rebelling. Like you said,
Yeah.
your sister rebelled, got pregnant at a young age.
Hmm.
Your father left. Like there were just some, offsetting things, negative things that happened to you at a young age, and you just
Yeah.
like, how am I going to justify this?
Yeah. Yeah. And then not receiving, like, as a kid, all the stuff I was going through from my father leaving to, like witnessing all the stuff going at home with the domestic violence, and then
Yeah,
going into the streets and seeing like murders and my best friend kill himself and all these things. I never received help with that. It was just like, you just deal with it and you just move forward. But that's not healthy, when you're a kid and you're seeing these things, that impacts you forever. And I learned later, that I had developed PTSD, and so all that was a causative factor of like why I became violent, why I was so in that warped way of thinking. And so it's like just, a lot of it, that's why I tell people now, like parents and stuff, like your kid's going through something, you just got to work with them. You got to help them and be with it, because you never know like what impact that had on them and what they're going to become because of it. So, yeah, and I didn't have that. And that was just because, like our culture, a lot of our cultures are like, you just be a man, you move forward. That's just life, but it's okay to get help.
exactly. And that, I feel like you growing up in that culture, that's funny because like that's probably the
Yeah.
culture that a lot of people grew up in. Where in today's world, like mental health is such a key component, and it's so much more exposed, and people talk about it a lot more openly.
Yeah.
Where like you went, like I couldn't imagine, watching my best friend. Was it suicide? Like I it was Russian roulette, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that
Yeah.
whole experience like? Like, what were you guys doing? Was it like, what was kind of the setting there?
Well, we were in a drug house, and there was people there that sold drugs and did drugs, and like at the time, me and my best friend, we were on drugs, and he played Russian roulette with one of the guys in there, and it hadn't been the first time he played. He's played before,
Yeah.
but that's just kind of like, it kind of paints the picture of what kind of life we lived. Like we walked around with guns on us. And it wasn't just walking around for show. Like we were walking around, like we would really use them if we had to. Like it was that mindset, and, not caring about our lives, not caring about the lives of others. So it's easy to play with, Russian roulette with your life, literally and figuratively. The things we were doing every day was like Russian roulette. It's just, so, and then it was also just like, that ego, like he was older than me, so he was always trying to like impress me, and he knew I looked up to him, and the guys in there, they were kind of his age, a little bit older, so there was that like competitiveness in there. And it's like, like anything you compete in, you just want to win. So his mindset was always trying to win, and he didn't win that game, and he killed himself like probably like 5 feet from me. And yeah, he died, and it's really tragic because he was only 19 years old. He was just like me, came like lost. and easily that could have been me. Easily I could have got killed like so many of my friends did, which is why I don't ever, take life for granted. Every day for me is a good day because I know like literally like all the stuff I've been through, I'm blessed to be here, like from the streets to prison. So yeah, man, that experience changed my life though, like completely. That made me even more violent. That made me start having nightmares. That made me not want to live anymore, and all is because of, the PTSD I developed from seeing that. And it took me, like, even now to this day, like, I'm still impacted by it. I just know, how to deal with the things that I'm dealing with. But some things in life, it goes to show that some things in life that they like the pain doesn't lessen. We just go stronger. So, and we become more equipped and better able to handle the tragedies of life. And so, that's really the way that I deal with it now, just the person I become.
Now, are you one of those people that, if you could go back and change anything in your life, are you one of those people that can say, like, I wouldn't change anything because this is who you were supposed to be at the end of the day? Or do you think
Yeah,
that if you were to go back and do it all over again, it would be completely different?
that's a great question because you know, it's like if I could look at it from like, if I do go back and change stuff, you're right. I may not be the person I am today. And the person I am today is a person who, aspires and to, inspire positive transformation in others every chance I get and to do good. So it's like a balancing thing. But if I don't go back and change anything, so many people have been hurt along the way. So it's such a tough question. But so I think that I would have to say that, I wouldn't go back and change nothing as hard as it may be because I would want to, I would want to bring Chris back and I would want to change things for my sister and my mom and my dad, all the people that, I've seen struggle and people that I've seen lose their life. And I would want to, but I also know that it's bigger than just my want. The person I am today is supposed to be this person. It's more of a spiritual thing for me. I'm meant to be this person to serve this purpose now. I feel that I was put here to do. So I would have to just, not change anything, but every day, like I do now, just try to change things around me for the better. So
And did you grow up in the Los Angeles area?
yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Los Angeles area, all throughout different areas, mostly gang areas. But like I said, when I was a kid, I grew up in a good neighborhood. It's just that's why I know anybody, like it doesn't matter where you come from, anybody can find themselves in a situation and end up in prison or end up, killed. It doesn't matter how good your upbringing is, it can happen. And so I'm one of those people that like I could have easily went and just played sports, went and played and pursued my dream to be a professional baseball player easily. If things would have just shifted in a little bit differently, but they went this way and I went down another path. So that quick it could happen. And so, that's why I speak to people who may be at that verge, like those kids and those youth who aren't fully involved in gangs yet or in crime, but they're like on the fence. So those are the ones that I specifically like to work with because I can relate with them.
How close are you to that area where you grew up? Are you right there?
No, I'm about like 45 minutes. So I'm in LA, but LA's huge. So like that part of LA where the gang is that was a part of is about 45 minutes from where I'm living now in LA.
And have you
So
been back there? Like, have you seen like any significant changes, or is it kind of the same environment, kind of the same vibe there?
and no, I haven't been back. But I've heard through like just people that I know that it's the same. Those things never change, man. They just continue to be toxic environments, and there's always stuff going on. And like I know one of my friends got out in prison and he went back over there and he got killed. He was like 50 years old just being over there. So, you got to stay away from those type of places. And that's one good thing about being free is like I can get away from that. Whereas in prison, you're in there, you have to deal with that every day. You can't run nowhere, you can't hide nowhere, you can't move away. And so there's a freedom behind that now, like to where I can separate myself from that life and those negative people.
What were you doing specifically while you were in prison that got you into solitary? Because I feel like once you get there, like it's almost supposed to be
Yeah.
a punishment, but at the same time, you being alone with your thoughts, if you're able to control them after a while, like if you
Mhm.
can find a way to get into a good headspace, it's almost good for you. But what were you doing specifically to get you in trouble there?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right about that. Like solitary first started off as a place where I was like alone in my thoughts, and that caused me to be suicidal. But then it became one of the best blessings that ever happened to me because that's where I discovered my purpose. That's where I started to change. And that's where I've discovered what true freedom really is. And it's all mental, because I was in prison. I mean, in the prison within prison, but mentally I had become so free that it didn't even bother me anymore. But I ended up in there because like for my first 10 years in prison, I was just a more destructive person than when I was out in the streets because now I'm going in young and you go in and you have to prove yourself. You're going to be tested. You're going to have to go through these fights and all that to even earn your reputation in there as somebody that you don't want to mess with or you don't want to take it, try to take advantage of. And that's like a chess game, it's mental, it's physical. And so, me continuously doing that, fighting, getting involved still with the gang stuff. So in riots, like with multiple people, and then I started selling drugs in prison. All these things happened within that 10-year period, continuing to do that to becoming a shot caller when I went to the yards, becoming a shot caller alone is a reason to put you in there. Just because they know you're a person of influence and they want to get you away from everybody. So all these things was why I was in and out of the hole. But it was when I went to solitary confinement for a long period of time, which was 3 years, that's when like everything changed at that point, because that was the time that I needed at the right time in my life to change. So yeah, and it is a bad place, but for me, I turned it into a place like that I needed to be to grow.
Do you remember what the one changing thought was while you were in solitary? Like the one thing that kind of changed and shifted your perspective?
Yeah, it was me like it was like now, like my why, everybody has their why. Like, why do we get up and do what we do every day? What's our reason? And for me, it was my mom, me constantly thinking like, hey, who's going to take care of her if I'm not there? She became my why. And then my purpose, like me knowing that the world out there, can benefit from me in some way. The people, the youth, whoever. I knew that my purpose was needed. And so those two things were my why that every day, those were the things that shifted. Like once I figured out my why, then it was like, okay, so it's bigger than just me. Cause me, like I could do it for myself, but sometimes like we don't like ourselves more than we like others. Like we may treat our wives or our kids or whatever better than we do ourselves, which is, I believe is okay to a certain degree, but for me in solitary, I was still working on myself. I still didn't like myself for a lot of the things I did. So I had to find something bigger than just for me to do it for. And when I had that shift of thinking that it's more so for them and my purpose, my mom, my purpose, and then me, is like, okay, that helped me. And that's what kept me on that right track.
I feel like a lot of people in any walk of life kind of has that crossroads where you realize like why am I not showing up for myself at some point? Like you love what you're doing,
Yeah.
things are in order, things might not be in order, but for whatever reason you're not showing up for yourself because it's like it's bigger than just you. You need to be doing something like who's the person who's the thing that you're doing this for the most besides you.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of find your why.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's difficult to find that. You find it after a while. Some people find it right away. Some people find it 20, 30 years later down the road, but eventually you figure that out. When it comes to, how to battle or like any of the brands that you started, motivational speaking, did you know like you had this planned out or was this kind of within the last year or so where it all came together for you?
Yeah, so I've been out 18 months. And when I was inside, I used to always like my last couple years in, I would, I knew that, I started to see, where I was able to channel my purpose, which was, I started to organize groups in prison, insight workshops with other men. I started to see transformation happen. And it was through speaking, it was through the mentoring and the coaching and the teaching that I was doing. So I knew that when I got out, I wanted to continue to do that in some way. And I always was into like, you know, um, like speaking. And it was crazy because when I was a kid, I didn't speak at all. I was like when I was young, but then as I got older and I started to like become more confident in myself, then I learned that like, that I could speak to people and people listen and they take what I say. And a lot of them come back to me and tell me things that I said that impacted them in a good way. So I knew I wanted to do that. And, I got out and I wanted to continue to go to school, which I did. And I went to, school and got my, degree in entrepreneurship and so started my business, with while I was going through the program, started my business and wanted to create a coaching business to where, we're able to work with specifically like young adults, those that are going from like seniors, juniors and seniors in high school, going into either college, going into trade school, going into the real world just to work. Because I find that it's that age group that has the most doubt. They're the most one, like they're not going to have people in school no more to help them. Sometimes even their parents are like, okay, you're 18 now, you got to go. So it's in those are the like my target market, my target area that I focus on. And that's what I've been doing, working with the youth in different places. And so yeah, and it's just been building from there, and now taking my business to the next level, and I want to start a podcast as well. So that's the next step.
You're going to be really good at it. You got a lot of stories to tell. How
Thanks.
did you find it difficult or easy kind of getting into that space of, because not you have the experiences, like you
Yeah.
have the stories and you're going to be able to be real with these kids or whoever you're speaking to, but at the
Yeah.
same time you got to be able to teach them those lessons, kind of use it to and implement it into their daily lives. Did you find that difficult at first?
Yeah, I did. And I didn't know what to expect because I had worked with men in prison. I mean, I knew how to speak their language. I knew they knew, there was that connection there already. So when dealing with them, I didn't know. And one of the first schools I worked at as a mentor was a continuation school, which all those kids have been kicked out of regular high school. So now you got a bunch of kids in there who knows some of them are involved in gang stuff already. Some of them just, have trouble in school. They're not paying attention or whatever it may be. So I didn't know what to expect. And that's one of the reasons why they brought me in, because I think they got to a point where they just ran out of options. So they brought me in and the first workshop I did was just like you had the principal in there, the psychology doctor in there for the school, the counselor, all these people observing because they like, okay, there's this ex-con coming in here, all these tattoos, speaking to the youth. They didn't know what to expect. And so I kind of just went in there and I went in there and I was like, and I spoke to my younger self. Like I didn't try to target specific people in there like these. I just said, you know what, if I was their age and I was sitting in that chair, what would I want to hear? What would I need to hear? And once I did that, I created a workshop and they were very receptive to it. Like we went around, everybody opened up, talked about personal stuff. We had a few of them, like show emotions, break down in tears, and other ones supported them. It was a powerful moment. Like it was seriously was, and that's kind of gave me confirmation of what I'm doing works, and I never knew because you never know like when you start something if it's
Oh
going
yeah.
to work or not. So you need that, and that's for me. I knew that it worked, and then from then on, I just kept growing and building and working with other organizations and colleges and stuff, going in to speak there. I mean, so yeah, just and continuing to always try to create better programs and courses and workshops. Always like every day I'm working toward that because you have to continue to work, so yeah.
Oh my God. And it's so cool that you were able to kind of formulate these ideas and thoughts too while you were getting out. Like you
Yeah.
prepared. Like Peter will tell you, like he wasn't prepared when he got out. There were still like a few months there afterwards where things weren't really clear, kind of blurry, where like you
Yeah.
had like your motions set. Um, was it easy or difficult connecting yourself with, those like-minded people that kind of had similar stories to you to surround yourself with and connect with and confide in and kind of reveal some stuff there?
It just about just having courage, I think, because I knew like when first met Peter, it was like, I was just hearing him, I was hearing him speak to somebody and I went up to him, I introduced myself to him and I told him my story briefly. And it's like having an elevator pitch, you always got to have that in your hip, ready to go. And it's like, so I knew that I had that already. Like whoever I meet, I'm just going to be open about my life. I'm not trying to hide what I've done. I'm going to use that. and turn it into something positive. And like we talked about earlier, like transferring that anger into something positive, transferring my negative lifestyle into something positive. And so opening up to Peter, and we clicked from the gate. And I think it was because of, you know, having that courage to approach him and speak to him. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's what a lot of people should do. Don't be afraid to speak up. Like, don't be afraid to speak what's on your mind. If you see somebody out there you want to talk to, go talk to them. I mean, you don't want to live with regret. If I would have not spoke to Peter, we would have never became friends, and he would have never been such a great influence in my life. And I would have probably lived in regret. Like, dang, seeing him, like if I would have saw him later, be like, dang, I had a chance to speak to this guy or become a friend to this guy. So, yeah, it's not easy. There's always that doubt in there. Like, dang, I don't know. But that's just, you just have to fight through that. You have to just push yourself through that. And like they say, it's that moment of fear. Like if you're going to go bungee jumping or skydiving, that moment of fear, that's the moment you got to go. When you feel the most fear inside is the moment you just got to go for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's usually what like in the moment,
Yeah.
like when going up to people and like whether it's like introducing yourself to someone and you're nervous or like
Yeah.
it's like that, like skydiving, bungee jumping, like
Yeah.
when you're at your mode, you're like, all right, F it, what's gonna happen is gonna happen, you know?
Exactly.
Was there anybody that you tried to connect with that it didn't go well? Because I'm sure there's certain friendships it's like, oh, we clicked right away, and then there's others where it's just kind of like, ah, it didn't work out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All the time, and that's one thing is like, you may get one out of 1,000, one out of 100, people that you speak to that you want to like work with or partner with or just become friends with or whatever it may be. You're gonna get rejected a lot of times. You're gonna fail. You're gonna get told no. But I always think, and like Peter does the same thing. Like we think like this is like, you know, I always go back like I was in prison. Like I'm just blessed to be here. So why should I fear anything? Why should I fear being rejected? Why should I fear failure? I've already failed as much as you can fail in life. Literally, like thrown in prison with nothing, like literally nothing, and failed as a person, and then not only that, being rejected like multiple times in prison, like multiple by just even the smallest things, like asking a correctional guard, hey, can I go get some water? No, you're being rejected like that. Like they have that power over you where like you can just get up and go walk and get something to drink like me right now. But in prison, you can't do that. Like if I want to go get some water, I got to ask permission. If I want to go get some food, I have to ask permission. If I want to go get my package that my family sent me, I got to ask permission. So you constantly getting rejected. So you become numb to it. And that's why I don't fear being rejected or failing because I've been there. So I've been conditioned that way. And that helps, that helps because like I look at life as like, this is a second chance at life. So I'm not going to regret anything. I'm just going for it.
That's
Uh,
both a
uh,
very good place to be and in a good way, a dangerous place to be because you're like, I got nothing to lose. Like, what's the worst that could happen almost?
yeah. I mean, what's the worst? I've been at the worst, so I always look at that and it's hard to get other people that haven't been through that to understand that. But that's one of the things that I work with too with people is um, like them identifying all the things that they have to be grateful for every day, because that's a start. Like every day you're grateful for something. You have stuff, you have things, you have people, all these, appreciate that. Don't just look at all the negative, you know? And so helping people have that mind shift, that helps a lot. So I try to work with people to do that too.
What's the
Yeah.
most interesting story or situation that someone has come to you, whether it's someone that you spoke to or someone that's just reached out to you in the DMs, where it was just an interesting story that you could tell that you really thought like, wow, like I resonate with this and I could help this person.
Oh yeah, man. There's always so many, and but one of the ones that I know like really sticks out to me was and so I have a YouTube channel and I interview like people on there with inspirational stories. And this lady she was from Australia, she got at me in my DM and she was talking about one of the interviews that she saw, and that so she was suicidal. She was on drugs, she was suicidal. She just broke it all down in the message of how like all the stuff she was going through. She'd never been to prison, but her listening to the inspirational story like got her through one more day. Like she was like at her end. Like she said, she was telling me she was on drugs. She was ready to commit suicide. She was telling me about all the stuff her family was putting her through. And she said she saw that interview and it got her, it made her appreciate more and got her through one more day. And she's like, if that person can get through 42 years of prison, because the person I interviewed, he did 42 years. He's like, she's like, I can get through this one more day. And so like that like kind of sparked it. And then we just been going back and forth, and she still goes through ups and downs, but it's the fact that like she could reach out to me from across the world and just I could tell her something, a few sentences, a word, just help her get through another day. And that's what I tell her, like just try to get through each day, one at a time. And eventually, if you keep doing that, then you'll find your way and you'll be able to make it on your own. Sometimes you just need that guidance. You need somebody to be there for you, even if it's just to tell you one good thing that could change your whole life. And so that as a coach and mentor, that's what I do, and for everybody and anybody that needs it.
Who's the person that you look towards, as a mentor or someone where like when they tell you something, whether it's just like a
Yeah.
pat on the back type moment, you're like, oh, that motivates me for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and like even as a person who's like a coach and mentor, I still have mentors and coaches and people that I go to, and I think that everybody should, in some way. It doesn't have to be like a specific you hire a coach or mentor, but it could be a friend, it could be a dad, it could be a grandpa, whoever. And for me, it's I'm blessed to have a few, but one of them is my mentor that I mentioned earlier, Alejandro, and he is like he's like just always has a way to like say something that's so like profound or insightful to where it like helps me get through whatever I'm going through.
Yeah.
And he's older than me, but he's also somebody that is like well accomplished, but also went through some serious struggles in his life. But he's somebody that I can go to at any time and ask just like, hey, can I speak to you for 5 minutes? He's gonna take that call and he's gonna tell me something I need to hear. And so he's the one that really inspired me to go to be a filmmaker. I've been a screenplay writer, but now to transition into actually filming, it's him. He's the one that like inspires me to do it. So
How
yeah.
difficult was it putting together a team and actually like on the production side making those?
Oh man, it's that's one of the most challenging things that I've ever been a part of. Like I was on set last month, I think it was about 2 months ago, of just a commercial, and we were doing a commercial, and there was like hundreds of people just for like a 15-second, 30-second commercial. And so to put together the team and then everybody be in sync and everybody be able to work together and coordinate together. And then that's another thing is like building your team. Like how you said, one of the main thing, if you want to be a successful director, filmmaker, is your team. So a lot of the people that you build on your team, you're going to go through years with those people. Like you're going to connect with them, like your cinematographer, your editor, your sound guy. You want to build that team. Like if it's like, you're going to go to war with them basically. And so it's just about picking and choosing who works best for you and with you. So that's challenging, in any area, but especially in film because your vision, everybody has to be aligned, like they have to believe in you, as a director. So I learned that from him and I've learned that since being a part of everything. And right now I'm building my team and to shoot my short film. And, I feel like that, I have a strong team, but it's like, I think it's just consistently doing stuff, and then you get better and better and better. So,
Oh my God,
yeah.
it's the most difficult thing in the world, man, trying to get everybody on the same page because not
Yeah.
everybody's going to have your exact vision. And who knows, maybe like
Exactly.
some ideas are better than what you imagine for yourself and you implement them, but it's just difficult getting everybody to be like, think exactly the way you're picturing it in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
It's it's a challenge, especially for young kids like me. Everybody just wants to do their own shit, and it's like
Yeah.
everybody wants to be the guy, But when you
Hmm.
have an actual mission and everybody's like, okay, this is the story being told, I think it's a little bit easier. And if they can
Hmm.
get inside your head a little bit in that sense, I think, okay, we're trying to make Carlos and his story almost look
Hmm.
as best as it can from his perspective, based on what he's
Yeah.
telling us.
Yeah, yeah, true. And you have to have a certain level of just you have to believe in yourself because at some point, if you're directing a film, like everybody's gonna rely on you. So to actually like, or that could be better, but you have to believe in your vision that's one of the hardest things to do is just believe in your vision so much to where you can tell somebody you're so close to, no, I don't think that's the right way. We're going to go this way. That's tough. And so those are the things that you grow, you become better at, you become more confident in who you are and in your artistic ability. And it takes a lot. But I've been learning that, cause I've been learning that. So,
No, but like
uh,
based on like what you were saying there, like are there
yeah.
any other types of screenplays or scripts that you've written? Are they all kind of based around your story and your experiences alone?
Yeah, so like the two screenplays that I wrote that got produced were just based on my knowledge of, life after prison, the struggles of that, from inside and outside. And then I've written, six plays that have been produced for theater. And so those were like a variety, just diverse, topics. So that like playwriting for me is more of like I could be more creative. I could just pretty much do whatever I want, and research and then write the plays and then like, put it together. So I'm a teaching artist as well. I go back into the prisons and I teach playwriting. I teach it out here as well at schools and stuff. Um, and for me, it was always just like a thing to do, a hobby really. And it's actually, become something I do, and get paid for now too. And it's fun. So like I get paid to just have fun. But screenplay writing, it's like my next one is going to be about like it's going to be based on like a true story in a sense. Me and my brother, he became a police officer when I was in prison, and my younger brother, and I hated police officers growing up. So the film is going to be about that. Two brothers, and they're at odds and they hate each other. But then at the end, change and going through what they go through allows them to see each other's perspectives and then come together. So that's going to be the next one I do. But I always like to write uh things that I can somehow connect with. You know what I mean? Like I want to connect some way with it, whether it's through a character or even just the whole experience of it, something that I could tap into. And so that's typically what I do when I do mine. Is something that I know like it's kind of personal in a way. And I feel like that's how I do my best work. So
Is there any
yeah.
real life moment that you've had in your experience that you would put on camera, no matter how difficult?
Yeah, yeah. So one of my goals long term is to actually make a full feature film of my whole life, the whole like everything and based on my whole life. And that's something that I'm going to do down the line. But yeah, so basically, yeah, the whole everything, everything inspired and based on my exact, but a lot of the key moments in the film will be actual things that happen in my life.
And do you think there's going to be one specific scene that you're going to have to shoot that's going to be like emotional looking back on and remembering those like key details? Yeah, I'm sure you remember most of them, where we're
Yeah.
just that's going to be tough to go through again when you do make that film.
Yeah, for sure. The Chris losing his life, man. That's like even when I go speak, like I speak publicly, and that's always hard for me. Like that's the hardest thing, and I have to really practice. Like I have to go over it, over and over and over, and then mentally get myself in a place where I can go out there because it's something about like I could talk to you about it and be okay, but it seems like it's something about getting on a stage in front of a ton of people. It's different. Like, I don't know if you ever seen like people speaking and then they break down while they're talking on stage. And this is something they've probably talked about 1,000 times. And so it's getting in the mindset to where I could talk about these things without becoming too emotional. And so, yeah, I know like reliving that over and over, is going to be hard, but I think that's part of the art, is like, expressing even the worst of times, the struggles. That's where you could really like impact people. So yeah, that's going to be a hard one, but
Mm. Well, I'll leave you with this because I know
yeah.
you probably got a lot going on as well. Do you take away any of these moments and just like think to yourself, kind of like going back to what we were talking about before, if you just like, maybe not wishing you could do it over again? Like, do you
Mhm.
take a look at some of these moments and think like, I'm not the only one that's gone through these specific things, as like unique as they are. Like, do you ever
Yeah.
think back and look towards other people and think they've been through very similar situations, and I was meant to be put on this earth to do exactly what I'm doing now, helping them get through this. All of these
Yeah.
ups and downs, these bumps, these bruises, all these hard, dark times, both
Yeah.
mentally, physically, spiritually. You finally get to that point where it's like, this was my purpose all along.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely. I always was like, besides wanting to become a professional baseball player, like I knew I wanted to do that. Like, but besides that, I never knew like what my purpose was and what I was here for, but I wanted to. Even as a kid, like I always wanted to know. I always like felt like I needed to know. And it took me all the way, into my 30s to figure it out, and through a lot. I went through all kind of stuff. I mean, I've talked about, and it took for me to figure that out. And it's like so many times I could have just gave up, and went and just ended it all, and that would have been the easy way out, but I realized that for me to be who I am today, I had to go through what I went through. And so that's what I try to encourage others. Like, don't give up. Like it doesn't matter how old you are. It's never too late to discover your purpose or to start doing something meaningful in life. But it all starts with you working on you and changing you first. Once you do that, then you'll start to discover things, and that's going to open up all the other doors.
And that's, going back to like, just do it, don't think about it,
Yeah.
just do, and
Yeah.
great things will happen. Either you're going to get a cool story about it, or you're going to get what you asked for at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And getting to that
Yeah.
point, I think, is very crucial. And you finally got to that point where it's like,
Yeah.
now it's all clicking, right? It was
Yeah.
meant to be in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Well, I
Cool.
appreciate you coming on today, Carlos. I'm glad Peter was able to hook this up for us. What's the
Yeah.
next big project that you have in the coming weeks and the coming days?
So my book's almost done. I'm working on it every day, um, staying disciplined in that. And it's very challenging writing a book. And I'm a writer, but writing a book is like the hardest thing I've ever done.
Right.
So my book is going to be coming out if everything goes right by the end of this month or next month. And I'll have it on all my stuff. So it's going to be like the book is going to be called Mind Shift, and it's going to incorporate a lot of like my stories in there, like what stuff I went through. But it's going to talk about like things that I recognize within myself, within others, and just from learning that I feel is needed if you want to have like that true mind shift in your life. If you want to change from a person who is like just living a meaningless life to somebody who is like enthusiastic about life every day, getting up in the morning, and you know exactly what you want to do and you're making an impact. It's all these things that you have to implement. And so that's my big thing I'm working on now.
And what's that called?
Mind shift.
Mind
Yeah. It's gonna be called Mind Shift. Yeah. So
Shift. Well, definitely look out for that, guys. And again,
yeah.
Carlos, I appreciate you coming on today. Where can we reach you on social media?
Yeah. So Instagram is at How to Battle. TikTok is at How to Battle, and YouTube as well at How to Battle. And then my website is www.howtobattle.com. So